here after hours for the trial because we do have to discuss domestic violence and abuse and like the different details that we weren't discussing in court today. There were some details that were missed, so obviously we have to like go into depth in it and like definitely talk about it, that way we're more informed of it. And here's a little preview of the pictures that were in court. Jurors, as you can see, that the victim's face is like badly bruised. I can pass this around. You could obviously see that her cheek is like pretty badly bruised. He either slapped her or hit her with an object because the bruising is going down to her neck, and obviously she took really big force on her ear because it's bleeding, and she has a black eye as well, and it's getting really, really swollen. And you can see that she has tears on her nose, so obviously there's some skin damage there. And then you could also see that he didn't just target her face, he targeted her legs. When he pushed her down the stairs, she took a pretty big fall, so we need to really discuss that. And then, of course, we can obviously see that when push comes to shove, it's not love. Relationships can be very deceiving because when you post stuff on social media, people can either think that you're really, really happy and your relationship is perfect, and you never really know what goes on behind closed doors. There are thousands of men and women who are afraid to reach out for help because of their abuser, and sometimes they let it go too far, and then obviously it's too late for them to get any type of help. Abusive behavior can have harsh and negative effects on victims throughout their life, and even after they do decide to walk away, they're still mentally and emotionally scarred. There's help everywhere that will help you out, slowly but surely. I've seen the impact that domestic violence and abuse does to people, and it's definitely hard to sit in the sidelines and not be able to do anything because the person is in denial and they do think that what they're going through is love when it's really not. So we should know what's right from wrong. Shelby, what do you think?
As a victim of domestic violence and abuse, I feel like more people should become aware of their friends and family members being abused and what to do. What do you think, Casey?
Since studying a little bit more on the topic of domestic violence and abuse, I definitely have discovered like so many new things that like can help me in my future, and also could like that I can share with other people to help them in their future as well. What do you think, Natalie?
I mean, as a person who has witnessed different types of abuse, I can assure you that it gets no better. If you don't do anything about it, the abuse is real, the signs are mistaken. It's better to be informed before it's too late.
That's perfect. So today we will actually discuss the importance of domestic violence and abuse by defining both of the definitions, talking about the different signs that would show that someone is in an abusive relationship, and talk about the misconceptions and stats regarding the different types of abuse, because obviously there's more than one, and the many different treatments there are, because some people aren't really aware. They just know about the hotline, but places can be local, so you don't have to travel as far. Importantly, domestic violence and abuse are two different things. They have two different definitions, but they're under the same topic, so we can all agree that they go hand in hand. According to dictionary.com's definition of domestic violence that I accessed on December 4th, domestic violence is violent, aggressive behavior within the home, typically involving the violent abuse of a spouse or a partner. And then also, what is domestic violence? An article that I accessed by the Center for Family Justice on December 4th of 2019. Domestic abuse is a pattern of coercive, controlling behavior that is pervasive, life-threatening crime affecting people regardless of gender, sexual orientation, age, or even race.
Now that we discussed like the definitions of domestic violence and abuse, we're going to talk about the different signs. So according to YourDream.LiveYourDream.org, accessed on December 4th, 2019, all domestic violence includes some kind of willful harm against a partner. So there's multiple different types of abuse. So there's the physical, which is like the hitting and the slapping, the kicking, the choking. There's emotional, so but there's emotional, and then there's mental, where your partner makes you feel small, and you feel isolated from everybody else. So my friends and family felt isolated from me when I was abused. There's sexual abuse, so demanding sexual favors. There's financial, so you get allowance, and they have access to all your accounts if they want to. There's digital, so they can look into your phones at all times, sending photos if they want, and then there's stalking. And that even includes even after all the abuse, and after leaving that person.
So recently, now that everyone knows like the signs relating to domestic violence and abuse, I'm now going to inform you about like some of the misconceptions that people have about domestic violence and abuse, and how some things aren't always like what people believe them to be. So some misconceptions that people have about domestic violence is that drugs and alcohol cause domestic violence because of like the way that you act, you know, like when you drink or you do drugs. But according to Phil Lopovic's article that I accessed on December 5th, 2019, called 14 Misconceptions About Domestic Violence, she states that we blame violence on the substance itself and not on the abuser. And the abuser themselves use the drugs and alcohol as an excuse, like for their violence. They blame like the beer instead of their own behavior. So making the statement that drugs and alcohol causes domestic violence is completely false, because the only relationship between drugs and alcohol compared to violence is that people who abuse drugs are also more likely to abuse others because they have like an abusive personality. So the next, talking about like misconceptions people have about domestic abuse, would be that women abuse men just as often as men abuse women. But according to Phil Lopovic's same article, 14 Misconceptions About Domestic Violence, she states that relationship violence does exist and happen to men, but for every one man hospitalized due to domestic abuse, there are 46 women who go to the hospital for the same thing. So as you can see here, every 9 seconds that pass, another woman is abused or beaten in the United States. 400 women are abused in every hour. 9,600 women are abused in a 24-hour day. And 67,200 women are abused in only 1 week alone. So saying that, like making the statement that women like abuse men just as often as men abuse women is false.
After reviewing the statistics about abuse, I'm going to go over the different treatments for domestic abuse and violent abuse, and the common weapons used for the act, and those that can help protect yourself. There is a refuge home housing for victims all around the area, like Community Crisis Center. As a center for, it's a center for families who have been abused. It's a local shelter for domestic abuse located in Elgin, where they speak English, Spanish. It's 24-hour facility, and the max number of days to hold is 45. Or if you're afraid or want to report someone who's being abused, you can call 1-800-799-7233 for the national hotline, or visit the hotline.org. According to behavioralhealth.com, found in December 4th, the exact treatment will vary depending on whether the patient is a victim or a perpetrator of domestic abuse. The different types of treatment include eye movement, desensitization and responding, which is known as EMDR, psychodrama therapy, group counseling, and family of origin therapy. Common weapons used for mistreat and abuse are belts, cables, hangers, fists, tie for strangulation, belt for strangulation, or hit, foot and a knife. Common weapons for non-abuse that can help you protect yourself are guns, pepper spray, tasers, knives, and a phone.
Now that we know the different treatments, I hope we all realize that help is everywhere and that advocates really want to help you. The more people are aware of what the difference between domestic abuse and domestic violence is, the more they would pay attention to the different signs, the misconception and stats, and the different treatments there are out there. Being in denial can always be a hard thing to walk away from, but knowing what love is and when to walk away is a major step in the healing path. Break the silence and be a survivor.